G'day guys, it's Tim here. Today I'm going to be showing you exactly how it's possible to buy a house from 50 bucks a week. First of all, just want to express my utter gratitude, like the video that we had last week talking about how people can buy a house from 50 bucks a week, and first home buyers just need to know this before they make any decisions. It's one of the most viewed videos that we've ever had on the Infinite Wealth Facebook page. But we did get a lot of questions from people asking, well, Tim, like it all sounds great, and a lot of people even suggesting that maybe it's too good to be true. So what I wanted to do today was actually walk you through the figures and show you dollar by dollar how you as a first home buyer can actually buy a house from 50 bucks a week. Now, firstly, what we discussed was the idea of rent vesting was it is a smarter, cheaper, and better way of buying a house. So, firstly, why is it smarter? Well, simple fact of the matter is that when rent vesting, you can buy in areas that are actually going to be far greater investments than an area that's actually going to be the most suitable to live. Okay, secondly, cheaper, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. And then, of course, the other thing is that it's going to be way faster for you to reach your goals if you're able to get in and do something much sooner than you really think. So let's talk about the actual figures now, guys. How is it possible for people to buy a house from 50 bucks a week? So the first thing we need to think about is when it comes to actually borrowing money and paying the interest. Now, I haven't included anything along the lines of deposits here, and I know sometimes people are worried about the deposit that it's going to require for people to actually get into a house. And of course, this depends on a lot of different things, including the kind of banks that you get into. But I just want people to know that we have been helping people get into a home from the minimum being around about $3,000 deposit. Okay, so it's nowhere near as big as sometimes people mean. But please keep in mind that this is dependent on your situation. It depends on your own personal details, and of course, what bank's going to be then best for you. But if we just take the case, say you're going to be borrowing $450,000 to buy a house. Look, it's not unusual to get an interest rate, and that's probably even a little higher than what a lot of people can get right now, but I like to work on worst case scenarios. So $450,000, 4.5% per annum, that'd be $20,250 in interest in a year. We've got other costs we've got to take into consideration. They're going to have rates. So if you're going to have rates, we've got to think of council and water rates. Let's allow $2,500 for that. That's probably a little bit high as well, but I always like to work on the high side. Insurance, you're going to want to have this property insured. Okay, now I've allowed $1,000 there, which is probably higher than you need, but what I've allowed for is that when you're going to be rent vesting, you want to have this property covered by landlord's insurance to make sure that you don't, if the tenants damage the house, or if they, bolt on the lease and don't pay their rent, those kinds of things that you're going to be covered. Okay. Also maintenance. Now you want to be buying the right kind of home. If you're buying an older home, that maintenance is going to be a lot higher. So let's make sure we buy something that's brand new, if not something that's very close to being new, so the maintenance costs are right down. Okay. Then of course, to eliminate the drama that comes from having to collect your own rent, that's allow $3,500. That's going to be pretty spot on in terms of property management. No matter where you are, whether you're in Victoria, Queensland, and Western Australia, there can be some difference in property management costs around Australia, but that should cover all the states. So what we're looking at is total expenses of $28,250, but they're the expenses. We've now got to take into consideration the income that you're going to be generating from that property. So there we are, we've got our total expenses. Let's allow rent. Now $400 a week, that's a pretty conservative rent. And also what I've built in there is only 49 weeks a year rent. Let's allow for 3 weeks a year where maybe you've got to secure new tenants, or maybe you're without a tenant, to give us a little bit of buffer there. So if we take the rent from the expenses, it leaves us with what we call a net loss of $8,650. So that's the expenses that you're going to have to pay before we take into consideration the tax deductions. Now, one of the reasons why rent vesting is much smarter, primarily what it comes down to, is that when you're renting out a property, the expenses, including the interest, are considered tax deductions from the income that you're generating. So that net loss, you can then contribute, or as the first part of what you can deduct from a tax point of view. The other thing is, if you're buying something like a brand new property, just like when you buy a brand new car, you drive it off the lot, it drops in value. When you buy a brand new house, or a house that's new, every year that house gets older, it depreciates in value, and this is something that you can claim as a tax deduction as well. So that's leaving you with a total tax credit of $18,650. You're going to get that back at the rate of tax that you pay. Now, obviously, if you're on a higher tax bracket, you're going to get more back. If you're on a lower tax bracket, you're going to get less back. But I've based that on the average tax bracket. The average Australian earns about $68,000 a year, and if you earn between $37,000 and $80,000 a year, that's the tax credit you're going to get back, which is a total of $6,061. So now we get to deduct that from the loss, the net loss that we had before. So there's our net loss, $8,650 minus the total tax deduction of $6,061. That leaves out-of-pocket expenses of $2,589, which is, if you divide that by 52 weeks, we're talking $49.79 per week. Which is, you know, it's just crazy. Being able to buy a house from $50 a week is a much smarter way of doing this home ownership. Now, I know for many people, what they're going to throw up right now is this: oh, but Tim, I can only put my tax in at the end of the year, which means I've got to pay a much higher cost and only get my tax back at the end of the year. It's not true, okay? There's something that you can submit to the Australian Tax Office called a tax variation. I highly recommend that you speak to an accountant about getting this done, because they've got not only the professional qualifications to actually do this, but they've got the expertise to be able to do this calculation and make sure that you don't mess it up. Okay, you don't want to have to come with a tax bill at the end of the year. All right, so that way, what you can do is submit your tax variation to the Australian Tax Office, and then what the ATO will do is they'll let your employer know, or they'll alter your PAYG tax contribution if you're a self-employed person, and basically you pay less tax coming out of your pay every single week, right? So that means you've got a real life cost out of your pocket of less than $50 a week. Guys, this is a much, much smarter way of doing it. And as I've discussed with many of you, like, I've rented for 20 odd years, and I rent today. I mean, you know, I know sometimes people say, you know, you're this guy that's out there, you're a multimillionaire, you're teaching people how to build their wealth, and you rent. That's crazy. Well, of course I rent. It is so much smarter, and you should too. All right, so guys, to run through the numbers, I've got the link in the description box of the Facebook Live video here. So if you want to find out specifically how this relates to you and maybe what your options are, I mean, obviously there's a lot of individual things that we need to look into, but you want to click on that website, go through and put in some of your details so that one of our team can get back to you and let you know exactly how this relates to you. But guys, thank you very much for viewing in. We got a huge amount of viewers on the Facebook Live here tonight, so I have a funny feeling this is going to be a busy video again for us. But, you know, get onto it and start building that wealth, all right? Look forward to speaking to you guys next time. Have a great night.